King of Scots.
Are we good in the audio? Yeah. Yeah. All right. What about what?
That Coronation.
Didn't
Coronation
watch,
Street.
Coronation Street.
Did you ever watch that?
Didn't see any of it, no.
No?
Yeah, I did actually.
King Charlie.
Couldn't help myself.
King Charlie of Scotland and Ireland.
King
Charlie III. Bonnie Prince Charlie.
You can't just talk like that and not tell people what you're talking about, Neil. Because they'll have no idea what you're talking about. They think Neil just went off on some weird Scottish accent and they don't know
Let
what.
it be. Let it be.
That's it.
I don't really have anything to say about it. It's, pomp and circumstance. God save our regime. The thing is, though, he's so old. I mean, it's been talked about for so long. The one thing we would talk about is, like, everyone knew that what could have happened here was that Charles would formally abdicate and let his son and Kate, Duchess of Cambridge, become king and queen. I don't understand. This is completely illogical, especially considering how well manicured and how well controlled the optics of the royal family in the UK is.
Mm-hmm.
They had a gift horse staring them in the mouth here. You know, you can help your institution by just bypassing him, who no one likes, or large numbers of people don't like, to someone who would actually be passively neutral and even attractive to maybe even most people. And they just blew it up.
It's a succession, though.
To me.
Succession.
Yeah. Skip Charles, go to those two. Instead,
it's not that. It's not that easy, though. I don't think it's part of the whole tradition to follow the lineage. You know.
Okay.
It would be a blip in the. You know, you'd be going back to. Who was it? George the. I can't remember the names now. Whatever, but the Queen's. Queen Elizabeth's uncle.
Yeah.
Who abdicated. It's a low point, you know.
Okay.
Although he was he actually was coronated and then dropped out, you know. But it's not good if you don't follow succession. Although I admit it would have been a better idea, yeah. But maybe Charlie won't be around for that long. With those sausage fingers that people keep talking about.
He's late 70s, right?
Yeah, he's got the sausage fingers going on, so. Do you have that image of Bob Moran? No?
No.
Why not?
We shouldn't.
It's too much?
It's a bit much. It's a bit much. Because, you know, it's sacred institution to a lot of people. Why you just poke them with it? Poke them in the eye with that kind of imagery, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You know, well, it's a mix. Like we've mentioned before, they're a mixed family. You know, like any other family. You can't just. There are, of course, the Republican movement in England that would write them all off and just be done with them. They cost too much to taxpayers. Blah blah. I understand that political perspective. That is also logical. You know, everyone else, most other countries in Europe did it.
Mm-hmm.
What are these hangers-on doing? But then, you know, you think about it more, you can understand the conservative draw for having a symbolic head of state who's above it all and who maintains the lineage and all that.
There's.
If you look at, like, there are actually some regal people, usually outsiders, not the actual royal family, but like Catherine, Kate Middleton. She looked spectacular in that ceremony. Yeah, she's definitely nobility. Just the way she carries herself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah.
Unlike Camilla.
Yeah, you know, yeah. you look at her and there's something wrong. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just going by snapshot. Look, this is superficial analysis, of course. But,
Yeah, yeah. Well, there is a history of her of some of the kids talking about, at least I think maybe both of them, Harry and what do you call him, the other guy, William, talking about her being a danger, her being a bit of a threat, her being dangerous, I think, is the way they described her. Back in the day, whenever Charlie was having an affair with her, basically, and maybe they didn't like her because she was the usurper mother type thing or whatever, in that sense. But there's an element that she's got a bit of piss and vinegar to her type thing.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know for sure.
There's a proverb attributed originally to Julius Caesar that Caesar's wife must be above suspicion. Kate Middleton is like, there is no scandal or gossip. Even Diana, in contrast to her, would definitely, there's gossip, the scandal. Kate Middleton there is none of that. Kamala, getting my leaders mixed up. She has, of course, scandal following. It's not just how she looks. It's not just superficial. Anyway, are we? I don't see messages in the chat. Are we
There
on
you go.
YouTube?
Or not. That's
We're
somebody.
streaming, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's somebody in the chat, I think. People in the chat, they're just not saying anything right now. They're not interested in the coronation. The only thing I'd say about the coronation is that it's probably, I'm torn on it, because, well, for lots of reasons, but history and British Empire and the English and all that kind of stuff, I'm kind of a bit torn on it in that respect. Traditionally, ideologically, I should be against the English monarchy and everything it stands for and all that kind of stuff, and British Empire, blah blah blah. But stepping back and just looking at it from detached as much as possible, a detached perspective, it's way better than having a head of state who is above it all, is beyond party politics, isn't left or right kind of thing, and can be loved by, in theory, by all of the people, or at least has a better chance of being appreciated and liked by all of the people, as opposed to a head of state like in most other European countries, which is like a politician who's elected every 4 or 5 years and who's always hated by at least half the population. It's better to have a head of state that at least nominally or in theory can represent the whole people without being a lefty or a righty or whatever, So that's just just a detached perspective on it, So, but I don't really care. It's all a bit. It's nice. I mean, the ceremony was nice. They talked about God and all that kind of stuff, and and a kind of appeal to the transcendent and something higher and something more, and justice and mercy, and as hypocritical as it might be or whatever, at least they talked about it, and it was in a religious setting, and it lifted people. That's why so many people in the UK, a lot of people in the UK anyway, actually like that kind of thing, because it does lift their spirits a little bit and gives them.
God knows they're starved of it.
Yeah.
Since the Protestant Reformation.
Well,
especially.
and even just society, the kind of like the negative aspects of modern society and stuff. And there's not a lot of sense of not a lot of spirituality, basically. You know what I mean? So it adds a little bit of
just
spirituality.
Endless succession of tossers for leaders, for
exactly,
prime ministers.
Yeah. So anyway, but they made it was very important for the English, let's say, and a lot of heads of state came from around the world. But you notice that one didn't come, one notable one didn't come, which was Joe Biden. And Joe Biden didn't come because, well, America stands against, America's foundation is anti-monarchical, effectively, because that they were breaking away. They were, they rebelled. The Americans rebelled against Charles, the coronated king yesterday. They rebelled against his forebears, you know what I mean, and everything they stood for, and that's the foundation of America. So there's never been an American president at a coronation. There haven't been that many, obviously, but they've never gone. Well, there have been quite a few actually since the foundation or the American War of Independence. There've been quite a few kings and queens have gone in England. And none of them, no president of America has ever gone to it in that history, in that timeline.
Did you look into that? Did you read that that's ever understood or stated as to why It's a
It's not
Republican
sp-
versus
it's-
monarchical position.
Yeah, it's not openly
a
stated, but it's
point.
understood. I mean, what's the other, what other reason is there?
I read that, well, at the time, so 19th century and further back, it's because of the distance. It's just too far to send.
And since then,
Since then, the only available, well, the most, just
Queen
remember
Elizabeth
how
and Queen
rare
Charles.
it is because of Elizabeth lasting so
Mhm.
long. That was Eisenhower in 1953.
and before that,
What was his reason? I think, yeah, they didn't give a BBC was going over this and saying, yeah, it's a nothing burger. It's not a dissing of by Biden, but they didn't give a good reason as to why. At that point, it was just convention. A convention based on the fact that it just never happened because of the distance of transatlantic travel.
what about George the Sixth? What about our father?
Don't know. So there is you think there's a appointed political
1936. There was no problem getting across the ocean in a steamliner in 1936, in a plane even 1936.
right?
And why not now? Why wasn't Biden there yesterday? Why only Jill? Why did he send his wife? Surely, and all the other, all other major heads of state there,
Hmm.
you know.
Well, yeah,
Freaking Saudis were there, man, you know what I'm saying? And Biden wasn't.
we forget it now, but they were enemies until 1870s because of the War of
Mhm.
Independence, and then 1812. It was only after the Civil War that rapprochement began, and then full alliance in the two world wars. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
the special alliance then doesn't count for that much, or it does count for a lot, but they keep this pretense of
Who knows? I mean, it's all a bit farcical, really, isn't it? Like, anyway, yes, that's enough of the coronation. I've nothing more to say on it.
So they attempted to kill Putin last week. Is that big news?
Did they attempt to kill Putin, or
Well, isn't that what they said? The media and or Putin himself. It was Putin's office.
yeah? Did you notice? There's an interesting detail about it. Actually, there's before we get on. Did you see this? Before we get on to just one last thing on the coronation. It was interesting. It's kind of funny. Obviously, there's a reasonable explanation for it. But if you have a look at this, it's a shot. I think it's when is it? I don't even know. I think it's maybe before it officially began or whatever. But there's the Ukrainian flag supposedly on the floor, right? The blue and yellow. I don't think it was chosen for that reason, but maybe you never know. Just play it there. Not playing.
Cameras to be
There you go.
focusing on.
Check that dude in the background. Yeah. Play it again there.
There's a lot of people in funny costumes at such events.
Yeah, but it's kind of weird in the background, you know. We have to refresh to play it again.
I think the sunlight is streaming through there, and that casts him in very dark. But
No.
actually, he's just wearing robes like the other priests or something.
Cameras to be
Vicars,
focusing
whatever.
on.
I think it's Klaus Schwab. He's looking
His
for.
Eminence agrees.
He's looking for. Yeah, he's behind this. Yeah, he was controlling the whole thing. That's why you have the Ukraine flag there.
Schwab is known to partake of the very, very, very unusual costumes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that is definitely a hooded robe with a giant staff.
Mm.
Yes.
Also, yeah. So just moving on to your claim that the Ukrainians tried to kill Putin.
Well,
Check. This is actually what happened from a Ukrainian perspective.
yeah, it all burned down.
Yeah, that's what happened. In case you missed it, that's what actually happened. The Kremlin, all of the Kremlin was on fire. There was a large kind of predator-like drone was involved, and there was actually Ukrainian military standing outside of the walls of the Kremlin on that day. At least that's how it'll go down in history.
Right.
Don't you love war propaganda? Makes it so easy
just so people know that that is an officially released stamp by the Ukrainian Postal Service this week,
Yeah.
despite its government's official absolute and categorical denial of
Yeah.
any involvement.
If you scroll down, Damien, just on that and go to the video below. Or sorry, is it not the video below? Oh no, sorry. Maybe I go to go up, go on up at the top again. Click on my no, don't click on my name. I'll do it. I'll send it to you now. Hang on, I'll give it to you. So there's that. The way it's been portrayed in by the mail service, the Ukrainian mail service, is what we just saw. What actually happened was this. Boom. Bit of fireworks.
There's a second one that actually impacts the dome, though, isn't there?
No. Another one goes down further down. Was maybe
But there's a fire then.
yeah, no,
that
it's the
survives.
remnants of that just
Started a fire.
catches fire a little bit on the roof. But if you go up to it again, there, Damien. Just on the foreground there, you can see the stands and stuff laid out for the May, which is tomorrow, 2 days from now, May 9th, Victory Day parade. But what's most interesting is can play again. Yeah, it seems like you need to. I don't know. Maybe you need to refresh. Just refresh.
Yeah, we can never replay a Twitter video for some reason. Happens every time.
Just expand it there. See the guys walking up the roof?
Yeah.
There's two guys there. Boom. What are the odds to be two guys on the roof? Obviously, there's more to this, you know. But those two dots you see on the left hand side on the roof, those are two guys. If you play it, you can see that they actually move. They're moving up those steps. And they don't seem that alarmed, actually, whenever it happens. It's not like they kind of dive for cover or anything. They just go, oh. So obviously they knew that they had eyes on a drone coming in or whatever, and maybe they were going up there to I don't know what the hell they're going up there for. Of course,
Come on, Joe. Give us a conspiracy.
Well, it provokes a lot of conspiracy theories that these were two guys who knew this was going to happen, and it was all staged by the Kremlin, and it was a false flag by the Kremlin, blah 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 blah. Doesn't really make much sense to me that it was a false flag, because the primary reason in this context anyway, the primary reason for a false flag, i.e. for Russia having done this itself, would have been to increase or encourage public support for the conflict, to pitch. Obviously, these kind of false flags, their main goal is to present the victim, i.e. you yourself, who carried it out, as a victim, and to, provoke public anger against the people who claimed did it, Ukraine in this case, and
As
that,
if
in that
Russia
way,
needs that.
Yeah, but Russia doesn't need that, right? Obviously, it's not really so that primary goal of false flags doesn't apply in this case. So otherwise, the only other possible one is then retaliation.
You cross the line.
You cross the line. Now this gives us
Medvedev said it.
a reason to respond.
Quote: "We should eliminate the entire Kiev government."
Except, I don't
Okay,
think Russia
simmer
would
down there.
at this point, given the public support in Russia for the conflict, I don't think they need any extra reason if they so chose to try and take out Zelensky or the Ukrainian government, whatever. They wouldn't need to do this to, you know what I mean? That's the kind of thing America does. It doesn't seem that this isn't necessarily, at least in this case, isn't something that Russia needed to do.
If it's a false flag, it's pretty limp, pretty lame.
Yeah. And it makes, there's negatives, there's downsides, but there always are downsides of this kind of thing, because what you inherent in that the idea of a false flag of that nature is that you look weak. What the hell? You could end up getting public opinion turning against you, at least to some extent, saying, what the hell what's the hell the Russian government doing, allowing drones to kind of fly right into the Kremlin? What about our vaunted air defense system, especially over the capital, especially over the Kremlin? What the hell happened? Jesus Christ!
Moscow is ringed with air defense systems.
Yeah.
That's big question.
It's all about the optics, basically. Whoever did this, and I think it was obviously somebody supporting Ukraine within Russia, somebody supportive, or actual Ukrainians or Ukrainian sympathizers, whatever, within Russia in Moscow, did this and did it for the optics, because why not? So in that sense, from that perspective, it's it looks weak. It suggests a significant weakness. This is all they can do. You know what I mean? As much as you might think it was like a real coup to be able to actually get a drone and explode it over I think that's the Senate building, in the Kremlin. It didn't. If that's all you're able to do, then it's pretty weak. Yeah. And of course, you know, that's a real problem for the Russians and for the Russian security services, because that kind of stuff's going on all the time. They're arresting people on a regular basis, you know, on a weekly basis. They're arresting various different individuals and groups of people in Russia who are planning, and they shove videos.
Since then,
yeah,
just
for the
this
whole
week they've claimed 2 foil plots,
right,
quote unquote terrorist plots,
right.
Ukrainian sympathizers / Ukrainians,
right. So the fact that one of them would be able to would have successfully flown a drone over the Kremlin and detonated it.
Well, 2 drones.
2 drones, let's say. Okay. Again, you know, why not blow up a shopping mall or something?
Yeah, and
You know what I mean?
cause carnage.
Yeah, because they can't. They'd be
Maybe.
doing it if they could, probably. I mean,
Right.
this is, at this point, and even before now, you're talking about a situation where it's terrorism, right? Where the Ukrainians definitely, before now, would have thought about and planned and tried to put in place a campaign of terrorism within Russia, where you blow up, you kill people, set bombs in various different places. That's where they go to. That's where they've gone to. You know,
To cause pressure on the regime.
yeah, to strike back. Yeah, exactly. But it seems that they're not able to do that very well. They don't have the networks or the resources within Russia to be able to do that. You know, so definitely they would be doing something like that if they could, but they can't. But it seems they decided for a bit of the optics of blow a drone up over the Kremlin.
Yeah. And it's kind of fitting that the story as a media event was a flash in the pan, matching the flash we saw, because it was like headlines around the world for 24 hours and it's gone. But those headlines were something. I mean, I noticed that many of the broadsheets in the Anglosphere chose to, as an image, to go with their banner headlines, a still of the moment of the brightest point of flash, and it looked like a huge red explosion on over the Kremlin. It looked, it was shocking. And then you saw the video and you're like, oh, that's it. The other notable feature is that for one day, the entire Anglosphere was promoting false flag theory.
Yes,
that's
again,
the thing
yeah.
that struck us.
Yeah.
When the fuck did this happen? We noted it last year, actually, and just at the outset of the war. Boris Johnson and others
Well, it
were
was
preempting.
Kirby.
Oh yes, the U.S. State Department began this. Yeah, we have an intelligence report that the Russians are planning to commit false flag attacks in Ukraine to blame on Ukrainian forces. It petered out, but for a while there, it was like, wait, false flags are really a thing? When Russia does it. Okay, interesting. So it's not a mental illness
anymore,
right?
No, because it's politically useful. Well, just talking about where the Ukrainian, what the Russian intelligence services are having to deal with. I mean, anybody who's paying attention knows that the videos show that they're busting into people's apartments and arresting people, actively planning attacks. But there's another one here that speaks to what I was just saying. Like, I mean, terrorism, and to the point of potential, almost like suicide bombers. This just play it there and you'll get an idea. This is in Russia.
This week.
Boom.
Oh shit.
So a guy detonates some kind of explosive device as Russian Spetsnaz attempt to arrest him in Yetsk, which Yetsk is just in, it's not far from Rostov-on-Don. They're in the southern Russia, basically, part of Russia that goes down towards the Black Sea.
And
it's actually on the Sea of Azov.
What's the story with him? The official story.
He was just, again, guy who'd been trailing him, watching his movements, seeing him, identified him as a saboteur, basically, and went to arrest him.
Probably a Russian, but sympathizer with Ukraine.
Who knows? I don't know the actual details
Right.
of who he is. He could be Ukrainian and could be not, but it's very, obviously, yourself, ethnically and
It's hard to-
historically, it's like, is he Ukrainian? Is he Russian? Is he Russian Ukrainian? Is he Ukrainian Russian? Whatever. But yeah, so he, as they come to arrest him, Allahu Akbar.
He did a suit. Is he dead?
I think so, but it looks like the explosion. He's not in good shape anyway. You want to play the game?
No, yeah.
Imagine what you'd be like if you were in the car.
That's some serious commitment. I mean, shit.
Yeah, but that's where it goes to, especially in this day and age. I think I don't know why you have to refresh every time.
He was committed. So that's the thing. This is why it's a minefield for Russia. Ideologically, this war. There's a lot of praise.
And the guys just kind of carry on.
Background.
The guys just carry on getting them out of the car. Oh, small.
Yeah, he didn't run. He jumped a bit and then went back. Maybe, does this have a connection with it? Because less than the next day, over Kiev, this happened. Probably, again, peeps have probably seen this footage, but you have to remind you, like, this all happened this week, but it's a flash in the pan in the news for a day, and then it's just gone. But at the time, I was glued to this, going, "What the hell?" Ukraine shoots down own drone over central Kiev. It wasn't, of course, known that there was their own drone initially, but that was admitted by the Ukrainians themselves. Does that video play there? BBC Player doesn't always work. Yeah, that's a moment of impact. But you can hear that. See those gunfire?
Yeah.
Joe Public from apartments buildings all over Kiev were trying to shoot this thing.
Yeah.
And then
it was a Turkish drone, the Barak.
Yeah, it was the kind of drone that the Ukrainians have been using, and indeed they admitted that. So the story from Kiev is it's one of our own. Something went wrong with it, and we had to shoot it down. And then it started a fire in a mall or something. I wonder. That was the end of it, and it's so close to what happened in over Moscow in time. My hunch. Here's my flash. Hot take conspiracy theory. That was supposed to do something, and indeed it went out of control, as the Kiev government said. Did they remote hijack the Russians and start flying it around close to capital institutions in Kiev, sending a kind of a reverse message, an immediate sharp message back to Kiev?
Mm-hmm.
At which point they went, "Uh-oh, shoot it down."
Possible. It's possible.
The other thing we should talk about, though, is that Zelensky was out of the country at the time.
Mm-hmm. Of the Kremlin attack, yeah.
He's not. I mean, he's rarely gone, right? He was in Finland, where he decided to stay an extra day, then flew to The Hague, not for the reasons one would hope, but and then he apparently sought to fly to Germany, and there's some scandal about that because he was scheduled to arrive in Germany like today or tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But he put in a request to come early, and it was supposed to be secret, and someone in the German government told the media about it, and then they were upset, so they canceled the trip. Something happened there anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's all orchestrated. Like, again, at this point, Ukraine is no longer Ukraine, I mean, they've been using a kind of pro-Russian accounts have been using referring to Ukraine as country 404, for quite a long time now, and that's really what it is, you know what I mean? Because I mean, it's been taken. I mean, nothing happens. Ukraine doesn't do anything without Western say so. You know what I mean? This is a situation where it's you can bet your ass that the Americans have taken full control of this conflict, and what happens and the progress of it is dictated almost entirely by Washington D.C. Because, like, I mean, everybody should know that this is not existential, but this is a war by America for American interests, using Ukraine to fight Russia. So you don't leave it to chance. You know what I mean? You go, yeah, Ukraine, just go ahead and let us know how you're getting on, type thing. If you need any weapons, just let us know. We'll fire those off. But you just tell us how the progress is going, and any decisions you want to make about how you think what should be targeted, or what operational moves you should make. You just go ahead and maybe we provide some feedback after the fact, but whatever. But just you go ahead. It's your conflict. Obviously that's not what's happening. Quite the opposite. So, this is America's conflict. America's its favorite conflict, as we talked about last week. That guy, what was his name? Begins with B. Don't know. That skullhead guy in the Senate, American senator, asking the general.
Oh, Mark Kelly.
Asking the general.
Yeah.
The general's Mark Kelly.
The senator was an ex-general himself. Now Senator Mark Kelly, bald, and he was talking.
No, the other guy.
The other guy. Yeah.
He's the one who made.
He talked about the war games they've been.
He's the one who made the point that I'm talking about, which is that we don't like to see a fair fight.
Blumenthal.
Blumenthal, yeah. So America likes to have proxy wars, because proxy wars, by definition, are wars that there's a level of there's separation between you and the conflict, and therefore, even if it goes wrong, you can always say, "Oh, that's bad." Ukraine lost. If you have to ultimately admit defeat, it's Ukraine who lost, not America who lost. And that's the way they assure they're kind of like sure they won't lose. America won't lose. At least not officially. At least on the Wikipedia page, it won't say America lost. It'll say Ukraine lost.
Right.
And Wikipedia is history, obviously.
So Wednesday, Kremlin's attack. Thursday, Kiev, maybe something happened there with the drone. Thursday, this happened. The attempted assassination of Zakhar Prilepin, a Russian novelist and former volunteer in the DPR militia until 2018. He actually volunteered again in Russia's National Guard. Last year, spent a stint in Donbass. Again, but he's actually famous in Russia as being a novelist now, true crime novelist, I think. He is alive but critical. In this instance, my first thought was, he was driving back from the Donbass where he was reporting towards Moscow, and they must have planted the bomb before he left and then timed it. No, actually, it turns out they've arrested a guy who pre-planted, say, the Russian FSB, an IED on the road, and when his car came by, set it off, and it flipped the car multiple times. Somehow his daughter had just gotten out of the car beforehand. Don't know how that makes sense, but she was with him. His driver was killed. He's in serious condition. He may have lost both legs. He may not make it.
Yeah, that's the kind of attack that you'd expect, and that is a serious kind of attack. You know what I mean? And the kind of attacks traditionally that the less powerful side,
guerrilla side,
that it turns into a kind of guerrilla warfare in a certain sense, or non-conventional, low intensity conflict. Where you have those kind of bombings, and like I said, where you put bombs in, try and sabotage infrastructure, or even to the point if it gets that bad, you start trying to blow up shopping malls and killing large numbers of civilians and stuff.
That may be coming,
which stands in contrast with a drone over the Pentagon or over the Kremlin. I mean, optics. If anything, just optics.
Yeah. Another refinery was hit somewhere in Russia near Ukraine this week. Yesterday there was some big move on Crimea. I mean, it happens. It's almost daily now, attacks on Crimea. But last night, the Russian Ministry of Defense says some 22 drones were shot down. That wasn't all of them. That's a lot of drones to send towards some site in Crimea. So that it's interesting. I remember, in the build, we're still maybe 6 months ago. That was still only at the level of a threat. We're coming for Ukraine. We're coming. It was Kiev saying we're coming to take all of Crimea, and we laughed at it like you don't stand a chance, even with Western support. Well, it's funny that it is actually happening, just in a way that they still can't take it, but they can cause a shitload of chaos.
Yeah,
refinery here.
but that's
Maybe
just,
we're not at malls yet, but they're
that's just
sending drones all over the
yeah.
place.
But drones are crap, like in that sense. You know what I mean?
But they're not nothing.
Huh?
They're,
No, they're annoying and
they're
and
annoying.
they keep you on edge and
It's
keep
not a
keep you.
full-scale ground invasion of Crimea, but they're going to annoy the shit out of Russia.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you can't expect anything less, but unless you've got like 10,000 drones that you can launch all at once. But I mean, drone technology is super easy. You know what I mean? At this point, it's very. I mean, there's those military grade drones that can fly for hundreds or maybe even, depending on the drone, like thousands of kilometers, can fly very fast. And can carry a heavy payload, and you just put some explosives on it and fly it towards your destination with GPS coordinates. You know what I mean? It's like it's stuff that's kitchen sink stuff. You know what I mean? Almost. You know what I mean? You can buy a drone off the shelf, spend $500-$600 or whatever, and buy a good quality drone, and anybody in theory could do something similar. And then that's not even talking about military grade material. So yeah, but I mean the Russians obviously are wise to all of that, and there's nothing that the Ukrainians are going to be able to pull out of the hat that the Russians aren't expecting, or haven't budgeted for.
Yeah. Also in the category of more of the same from Ukraine, the Ukis have arrested Gonzalo Lira again. This time it's there's no doubting that's what's last time he went missing, and people wondered what was
quiet.
up with him. And then he came
Didn't go
back
missing.
and said, "Yeah," and they talked to me, and they let me go for now. But this time it's like full video, dawn raid, hands up in the air, put in the car, and he signed a confession or something, or a confession or some document to the charges put before him by the SBU. It's not like this isn't Ukraine, like you said, is not a real country anymore. Due process is long gone. So he's not disappeared. At least this time they're showing. We took him. He's with us.
Yeah, here it is. Here, the video that's going around.
Welcome to Ukraine.
Welcome to Ukraine. Make sure you get pictures of his toilet. It's important.
Yeah.
And then
And
it's
his
literature.
illegal literature.
It's offensive literature.
Banned books, of course, in
Yeah.
Ukraine.
Check out what's he been doing.
What's his
shit.
browser saying?
He's been uploading videos.
And of course, this is their production. I'm pretty sure it's their production.
Yeah.
So that's their shit game music, to make them look hard, which
Yeah.
they put to all their promo videos.
Yeah.
The absolute fags.
But and then he's taken down and booked and all that kind of stuff, and he'll be awaiting trial. But I mean, the question is, what kind of laws are on the books in Ukraine where someone who was simply living in Ukraine and expressing an opinion that wasn't favourable to Ukraine, was a pro-Russian opinion? What kind of law can you be, sent down for any length of time? What kind of law is there on the books in Ukraine where that's an actual criminal punishable offence?
I think they have tried to make the case. There's another video that's released showing a clip from a recent talk video he made. And the specific clip translated into text underneath in Ukrainian is where he's recapping, as he describes the essential nature of the regime in Kiev as fascist. And he's made a case for it. He's not just throwing out. He's been trying to be more careful, I suppose, since his last arrest. But that is what he said.
Is that a crime?
And apparently, that's the infringing section. It's like in Ukraine, it's different. It's not just a YouTube will say, "Boom, that section in your 2-hour podcast is we're bringing the whole thing down." In Ukraine, it's like that section in your statement gets you a dawn raid.
Yeah.
That is what they said. His infringement is. He described the regime in Kiev as essentially fascistic, and of course they just proved his fucking point with an intelligence dawn raid. So. I think he'll be okay because he's a U.S. citizen. Not that he's going to get any protection. He himself or someone else suggested on his behalf that maybe Scott Ritter said it probably has been taken out at the behest of the Americans because they would have left him alone. But nearly everything in Ukraine is controlled these days from across the Atlantic, that would be more likely. But still, we hope for his sake that his being an American citizen means he'll be deported or something, and not just.
Well, you know, if he's obviously trying to make his money, make his mark on social media, right? On YouTube and on Twitter and stuff. So I mean, that kind of publicity is good, you know, for your Twitter followers, you know. If you're willing to go to
If you survive,
if you're willing to go to jail for some clicks and some follows, then fair enough, you know, it's your choice, you know. But like, I mean, the fact that
I
he
think
didn't,
he has a daughter there in Kharkov,
yeah. But does he need to live with her? How old is she?
young. He's separated from.
Well, in that case, then
Mother, but-
I mean, he also can't expect that he can't. This can't be a surprise to him, or
Right,
something that
that
he
he's
wasn't
speaking
expecting.
out.
That he wasn't expecting happening at some point. Like, I mean, it's not a, you know, it's not all it's not all just shits for shits and giggles type thing.
Yeah.
There's a real war going on, and you know, people are being killed, obviously, and are dying and fighting in this war, and you know,
So yeah, he has your sympathy, but for God's sake, you know, you can't exactly
no,
be shouting about your rights
No.
in a place like
right, exactly,
Ukraine at
yeah,
this time.
for sure, yeah.
What about that Prigozhin? Yevgeny Prigozhin. What the hell is he playing at? I was disgusted when I saw that stunt. I suppose it's easy just to be disgusted because he was showing dead Russian bodies, but there was also the ranting and raving at high command back in Moscow.
Right, it's not the first time.
I
it's
thought,
done.
well, sure, yeah, it's not the first time, but it's been escalating, right, ever since he started doing that with his videos. There's a guy who knows about promotion on social media. Well, I suppose I have to eat my words because I initially said, oh, he's crossed the line, that man. Take him home, get him out of there. Because since then, the 2 days later, apparently he's getting everything he wants. Suvorovkin, the former head of command for the Ukrainian theater for the Russian military, is going to give him everything he wants. So clearly the guy has a role to play that's accepted by the Kremlin, and he can talk smack about Gerasimov and Shoigu all he wants. And look at that angry face.
Yeah.
Me, angry Russian. Yevgeny Prigozhin, Wagner boss, promised ammunition after retreat threat. There was definitely some antics on his part because it's unclear. Like, he's saying in one of his videos this week, he's got a bunch of his still alive Wagner fighters behind him saying, that's it, we're done. We're not getting what we want, so we're all pulling out of here on May 10th. And you can just do it without us. At the same time, it's like there's a quasi-official confirmation that Wagner forces are to be sent away and to be replaced by Kadyrov's Chechen militias who are coming back in Bakhmut to replace them. So this is why I was suggesting this is antics, because it looked like that was going to happen anyway. Wagner's getting everything he wants, but they're still being retreated or rested or something. Who knows? My point, I suppose, is what we were talking about last night. It's like it's war propaganda, maybe even not even planned. It's just he genuinely spouted off and probably genuinely pissed people off in the high command. But there's a process underway anyway. It's the next phase. Bakhmut is taken. There's a shitload of Ukrainians behind there, lined up in part for this much touted counter-offensive and for the Zaporizhia and elsewhere. Moscow also said this week there's a huge force lining up around Odessa. We don't know.
Supposedly. No, like Wagner's, like, the thing about it is that how many, you remember Blackwater?
Yeah.
What's Blackwater?
XC now. It's a mercenary force for the United States military.
And made its name in
Iraq.
Right. And it and others amounted to an estimated number of
In the end, they were most of the U.S. force
Right.
that was in Iraq.
Right.
Hundreds of thousands.
And in Afghanistan as well, so up to 200,000 of them. So, for that to happen in Iraq over like 10, 15 years and it to be just like, yeah, this is normal, and CNN to report on it like it's normal, because it's a war over there in the Middle East and nobody cares, it's not near our shores. We in the West can just like, say, well, just keep up with it on CNN now and again, see what's going on, whatever, but it's no big deal and we don't have to get too worked up or emotional about it, whatever. Because it's just killing Iraqis basically in the Middle East. That's always been you should just turn the whole place into a glass parking lot. You know what I mean? Those damn towelheads. They don't. They've never been able to get along. And anyway, we need to go over there and civilize them. And it's all awesome, right? But suddenly, as soon as there's a war in Europe or close to Europe, and Russia's and America's not the one who started it, suddenly there's recriminations and it's being looked at under a spotlight. Understandably because it's much closer, but no less hypocritically. In a certain sense. It's understandable, but it's also hypocritical, because it's close to people, it's close to the Polish border, right? Close to Europe, close to... And it's Russia and, blah, blah, blah. But Wagner is a private military company with about 50,000 soldiers. It was formed in about 2014, not coincidentally, after the Euromaidan in Ukraine, that set the whole ball rolling. And they've been involved in Syria and various other places around the world. But it's a private military company like BlackRock, like you said now, XE, and there are many of them around the world. But obviously, bigger countries have bigger private military companies. But ultimately, they are part of the military structure and military command, and they're under the control of the military command. And Wagner is under the control of the Russian military command.
But people and his antics have gotten people carried away with the idea that it's a rogue force, that Yevgeny Prigozhin is the one commanding it.
Do you think, okay, probably they didn't have many, but do you think like the leaders and of Blackwater at the time in Iraq and Afghanistan, but people on the ground, the commanders on the ground of that quote-unquote private military company, which is, very often made up of people who have just moved out of official military service, resigned their service, and gone straight into a military company for the specific reason of getting more money in the private military company, right? That's an awful lot of people in Blackwater came straight out of the US military the day before.
Same as Wagner.
Right. So these are people who are like just put on different clothes, basically.
Yeah.
Put on a different outfit, and they're officially, they're no longer officially employed by the Russian military, but in fact, they more or less are. They're under the same command. Do you think any of them in Iraq or Afghanistan, or any of the Blackwater officers and stuff on the ground, had any complaints at any time during the 10 years or whatever it was in Iraq and Afghanistan, 20 years in Afghanistan? Do you think they ever complained about conditions or about lack of weapons or lack of support or lack of this, that, or the other? Do you think that ever happened? Do you imagine that might have happened? That they might have had some complaints?
Yeah, sure.
Right, yeah.
Undoubtedly.
So,
huge logistical operation.
Right. So it, and it goes up the normal line, or you don't hear about it. And again, the other thing that is interesting about this particular conflict is that even compared to Afghanistan and Iraq, is that social media, even in now a short period of time, like say Iraq was officially 2010, so you're talking about 10, 12 years. In that 10 or 12 years, social media and social media interaction has exploded, particularly in the Western world. There weren't many people in Western countries who were that interested in what was going on in Iraq. There were quite a lot of videos, but there were few and far between. I'm talking here about technology and the ability for people in the conflict zone, the active military personnel in the conflict zone, and civilians in the conflict zone to have access to social media and access to high quality phones with high quality video to take video of stuff and upload it. You know what I mean? This is a much more interactive war now. For two reasons. One is technological advancements, and the other is the proximity of the conflict to Europe, meaning that there's far more interest in the conflict compared to Iraq, because they were just a bunch of ragheads and who cares? Not really interested in what's going on. And the Iraqis and stuff weren't necessarily running around with high quality iPhones and taking video and uploading them to Telegram channels, because first of all, Telegram didn't exist then. You know what I mean? So there's two factors there that make this a much more social media interactive war with a lot of people, getting a front row seat on it. And in that context, what I'm saying is, in that context, just to make my very long story short here, what I'm saying is that if this conflict was American soldiers and American private military corporations fighting in Europe against whoever, or even not even in Europe, elsewhere around the world, but particularly in Europe or in America, God forbid, you can be sure that there'd probably be a lot of videos from the people like Prince, what's his first name? Eric Prince and others, whoever would be the owners or the commanders of private military companies in that context,
lobbying on their behalf.
They'd be uploading to social media. They'd be uploading to Facebook. They'd be doing exactly the same thing that Prigozhin is doing right now. So the whole idea of like, oh my God, this is weird or this is crazy. It's not. I mean, just put Americans in the same position and they'd be doing exactly the same thing. Yeah. But there's a lot of new stuff happening now because this is late stage capitalism, proxy warfare in the digital age.
It's bizarre.
We've never been here before.
No, a billionaire on the battlefront.
Right. We haven't been here before, so the stuff that's coming out, you can go, yeah, this is crazy. You don't know what you would do. It would be the same for anybody in that situation.
You know what Westerners forget whenever they talk about Wagner and they bitch about it and they point out it's false? Prigozhin is the guy they said was Putin's chef who provided the seed funding for the IRA, Internet Research Agency in St. Petersburg, that began the troll farms that began swaying the US elections in 2016. He's the guy that they say is the center of the fucking spiders of Russiagate. They've just either forgotten that or they just neglect to mention it whenever they bitch about Wagner.
Except that was all bullshit.
Yeah, and they know it. Hence, they just forget their own lies.
Right.
Yeah, so Ukraine, same as. We're all still poised on tenterhooks for this counter-offensive.
For the biggest, most awesomest ever offensive in the history of offensives.
On with it. But as you were saying to me last night, there is no get on with it. We had to remind ourselves that on this show, like over a year ago when it began, when the first sanctions, major anti-Russia sanctions were slapped on Russia, even that was optics. And Putin must have known this in his response to them because he gave a talk of some kind, maybe it was a formal speech, and he said to people, so irrespective of what happens, the counter-sanctions we've applied to Europe and the United States are to remain in place. I've signed that this will be the case. They are to remain in place all the way through to at least December of 2023. He's saying that in February last year. They know how long. They have gamed, like the guy we saw last week, in the Pentagon guy. He said, we've gamed this out. Well, the Russians have gamed this out too. They knew this was going to take several years.
Yep.
So everyone can just, stop gripping the armchairs and remove the tenterhooks. Just, it's going to take a lot of time.
Yeah.
And their actions, if you pay attention, their actions do speak to that. Obviously, it seems short-termist and a bit of a double-barrel shot in both feet for NATO countries to just drain their stocks of ammo and stuff like that. But that was just the first part, because now the next part is they are apparently going to reindustrialize at least partly. The European Union announced this week it's diverting major funding for what's usually its motorway building program in Europe to fund the Ukraine war.
Awesome.
Backing up those actions, here's Borrell again. There's nothing new here, but he's restating it, so let's hear him say it. That's some confidence about how awesome the European Union is. This is the top diplomat, Josep Borrell. We have no choice but to defend Ukraine or it will fall to Russia. He doesn't explain why that's important, but still, he's restating the mantra.
They want peace, yes, but the time being, unhappily, Putin is continuing the war, and Ukraine has to defend. And if we don't support Ukraine, Ukraine will fall in a matter of days. So yes, I would prefer to spend this money increasing the the well-being of the people, hospitals, schools, the cities, as the mayor is asking for. But we don't have the choice.
You don't have a choice. Of course you have a choice. Why not? Why don't you have a choice? Ukraine will fall and Europe will
what?
fall under Russia's sway over a number of years, which is what America has been fighting against for quite a long time. So, and that's bad because we like it the way it is right now. It's just a personal preference. It's not end of the world stuff, but it's a personal preference.
Well, he's Spanish. We have no choice. He's convinced of that himself.
Yeah, but what he doesn't...
And they all are, according to mantra.
Right, but Ukraine's going to fall anyway. At least part of Ukraine is going to fall. You know what I mean? Part of Ukraine is going to be incorporated into... A big part of Ukraine is going to be incorporated into Russia.
And the rest is going to be Moscow friendly.
Another chunk in the west might become part of Poland.
And
then there'll be a centre piece
Kievistan.
around Kievistan, which will be kind of non-aligned.
Kievistan.
And then, so they're working. They just don't want to give everything to Russia. They don't want Russia to get everything its own way, and they want to have it turn into a kind of a stalemate kind of situation. You know what I mean? That's the best thing
Korea
for
or the DMZ.
Right, because if Russia, it's mostly about optics here. I mean, it's all about, we can't be seen to lose because public opinion and the optics of the situation are extremely important. They have a real world impact. If Russia wins,
because
then
they made a big optics issue out of it
right
at the beginning.
Yeah, but they don't care. They got to do something. Like, they're bored. They're
bored.
Yeah, absolutely. These people are bored and they don't mind a good war now and again. In fact, there's many potential benefits from a good war. That's how cynical you have to be about the whole situation to actually get a proper read on it, because otherwise none of it makes any sense. If you're not super cynical, and I'm using the word cynical, but you could just as easily say realistic and practical about it. Leave aside your ideals and all the stuff that politicians even try and force on you. And when they talk about it, about a war, war against aggression, and we have to stand up for liberal, Western liberal democratic values, blah, blah, blah. That's all just talk. I mean, practically these people are just doing it because there's, ultimately it's in their own self-interest and their own personal positions of power and influence and their own and wealth. And that's all it is. But they have to clothe that in something a bit more palatable to the average person, because if you just talk about it in terms of your own personal positions of power and wealth, nobody's not going to get a lot of support for it, So, and of course they bullshit themselves about that too, you know what I mean? People just are full of narratives, They're narrative making machines.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what's going on there, and I don't think it's going to have much noise going to happen. There's supposedly, what is it, day after tomorrow, whatever, on the eve of victory, the Victory Day celebrations in Moscow. That's when Ukraine's going to launch its biggest, most awesomest ever offensive in the history of offensives in the world. It's going to be the offensive to beat all offensives, and it's going to sweep through in 2 days. You remember Russia was going to take Kiev, that nobody actually said, but Russia was going to take Kiev in 3 days. Well, they're going to take Crimea in 3 days. The Ukrainians are going to take Crimea in 3 days, according to the Ukrainians. So it's more nonsense,
Is that official?
Huh? Official according
Who said that?
The NAFO trolls.
Oh, damn.
And all the
optics narratives, yeah.
And all the diehard Ukrainian supporters on Twitter are saying that that's going to happen, Just wait, Neil, just wait. 2 weeks to flatten the Russian army. But like, in case people need to be reminded, this war is about a war of attrition, right? Like any war. It's not about how much territory you've taken, how fast you take territory. It doesn't matter if you advance and then retreat, whatever. The bottom line is it's two groups of men with guns, and there technically are a limited amount of, there are, in a very real way, there's a limited number of actual able-bodied males who can carry a gun or can man a rocket launcher or an artillery piece, and those two groups of men stand off against, go to war against each other, basically, start fighting each other, and they start firing at each other, and certain numbers are killed on both sides. The side that loses
The least.
most or all of its men loses. Whenever they're gone, that's it. The war's over. The other side won. Why? Because you have no more men to fight the war anymore.
This is going to play out all the
Until
way.
that happens.
Yeah. And does it ever strike you like Putin seems very calm throughout all this?
Yeah.
Because he knows that this is going to play out. Like I suggested, he knew the sanctions would have to remain in place all the way through this year, 18 months ago, because this was going to play out more or less as it's happening. And they wouldn't be, complete prophets or anything. But again, we have the Ukrainian guy, Arestovich. Do you remember that clip from 2019 in which he's asked by a journalist of what happens should the war kick off? And he described precisely how the Russians will come in, where they will come in, how many numbers they would have, and the time frame in which they would do it. So it's apparently common knowledge in these circles that once a certain threshold is reached, that's it. The whole thing has to play out.
Yeah, of course.
Until one side has just not enough.
In the same
men
way,
left.
whenever two people sit down and play a game of chess, you know more or less what's going to happen, right? You know that one's going to win, one's going to checkmate, and the other one's going to lose, right?
Yeah.
But before that happens, you know the limitations of the moves that can be played. There's not going to. I mean, you know that neither of you are going. Both of you agreed to sit down to play a game of chess, and you're both invested in playing the game of chess. You know that neither of you will introduce a new rule where I get to grab all your pieces and put them on my side of the board. You know that practice in a war situation that can't happen, obviously, but it's an example of how there are rules of the game that you're constrained by. Not 'cause you'd like to change the rules if you could, but you can't. It's like you physically can't break any of the rules in a game of chess. You have to follow the actual plays, and that allows for a level of calm, a relaxed attitude toward it from both sides, because you know you're constrained by the rules of the game. I mean, it's limited, and the analogy only goes so far because there are certain things you can do to kind of but those are taken into consideration as well, the kind of sneaky moves, or, kicking your leg under the table or something, or trying to distract you while you're making a move, that kind of thing, They're all technically allowed, They're sneaky and stuff, but ultimately the rules of the game are fixed.
You can try to out-psych
Yeah.
your
Exactly,
opponent.
exactly. But the rules of the game are fixed, and until you go, okay, well, we know where this is going to go. And if you're smart enough, you've looked at it and you realize that from the Russian perspective, you see, listen, we know Russia knows America had to do this, was going to do this, and this is the track they're on, and there's no turning them. Okay, let's budget for that, and let's have our own plan to where we want to go, and let's see how it plays out. There'll be a few twists and turns along the way, but from the Russian perspective, which includes obviously the Chinese perspective and a lot of the global south, the world is changing towards naturally, via natural forces, natural momentum of development of technology, development of economies. The world is was always going to turn towards a multipolar world. America was no longer going to be able to be top dog and dictate terms as it has done for the past 100 years. And America recognizes that as well, doesn't like it, and is going to do whatever it can to make sure that the kind of multipolar world that we all transition into is one where America is, in as best a position as it can be, and its rivals are in as bad a position as America can make it. Because multipolar world, America accepts a multipolar world, except some are more multipolar than others. It accepts an equal world where some are more equal than others. I mean, that's how they see it.
Some poles are less equal.
Some poles are less equal, yeah.
But that would be objectively the case.
Of course.
With population
Right.
size,
Right.
country size,
Of
economy
course.
size.
Of course.
Allow that to happen. Stop
Right.
trying to force it the way you think it should be,
Well, but no, you have to do something to get your own, right? You can't if you just sit back and go, yeah, multipolar world, whatever. You guys decide for me how much I should get in this multipolar world. You decide for me. America's going to say, yeah, Russia, China, you decide, what position I should take at this multipolar table. No, America's going to be like, listen, I'm in the game here, and I'm pushing back, and I'm getting what I can out of this, and that means pushing back against you guys, because I don't trust you guys that in your purported multipolar world that you're not going to leave me with a load of scraps. So there's mutual distrust all around the place, But the most distrustful one in all of this is America, and always has been, which is natural coming from the position that they come from, which is being top dog for so long and enforcing its will in the way that it has enforced its will through blackmail and manipulation and threats and all that kind of stuff on other countries. It believes that in any world order, anybody who is above America will treat it badly the way it treated other countries badly.
Yeah. And do they really believe that stuff?
Who?
The Americans. The key Americans, the real power brokers. Look at this article here from Axios, published yesterday. U.S. is in talks with Gulf states. Scoop, i.e. someone expressly high up told this to Axios. The United States and Saudi Arabia and others, I think the UAE, to discuss railway project connecting Middle East. Interconnectivity within the Middle East and then on to India. You were saying something to me last night that what's going to happen here is these objective processes will continue and the US will be dragged kicking and screaming by them into conformity to some extent with the multipolarity. And then I saw this article and I thought, that's it. That's probably only intended as a sop, as a kind of dangling a trinket to the Gulf state sheiks. But at the same time, SOPs will only work for someone. They will have to enact and follow through on actual, show me the money, So the new standards are set by the other key players, and America will end up adapting / adopting those standards unwillingly or unconsciously, bit by bit. Even speaks to your point that this may take time, but
even for the
Xi and Putin are confident that they can be brought around.
Because facts on the ground, Trump ideology or rhetoric or lofty words about freedom and democracy and American exceptionalism being the world's policeman and stuff. Facts on the ground trump that, and there are big changes happening, and it seems to be part of a natural order, and it's kind of a good thing in a certain sense, that the world finally might come together and recognize their mutual dependencies and mutual interests, rather than being at each other's throats for so long, and especially in the Middle East and in that area of East Asia, a lot of those divisions among countries. I'm talking about Saudis and the Iranians and the Israelis and the Palestinians and the Syrians and the Iraqis and all the rest, and the Pakistanis and the Indians and all that kind of stuff. They're all a legacy of Cold War, and before it, British Imperial. They're a legacy of the Great Game era.
You're with us, or you're with the commies,
right? And a largely non-industrialized, non-technological state of global development. As the thing that changes it all here is everybody being lifted up essentially into a techno age, and suddenly it's no longer necessary to fight each other tooth and claw.
Yeah, to fight each other and to be forced to choose
resources
between one system or the other. Because the US, at the Cold War, the US was saying, capitalism is the way it'll develop. Come, follow me. Come. And then the Soviets were over here saying, no. You need socialism. Socialism lifts you from poverty, And the either or, it's like, well, I'm third world. Which one will I follow?
Right.
They tended to lean with the Soviets, of course, and the Chinese, but not always. Yeah. So, like you said, that's now a moot point. Because look at how China got rich.
Yeah.
They went full capitalist, They keep saying, we did it with communist principles and socialist science and stuff. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Come on. You got rich as quick as you could.
Yeah.
It's capitalism.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the Donald Rumsfeld back in 2003 or so, about 2003, was famous, at least in my mind, for having called Europe, denigratingly called Europe, old Europe, because of that. It was in the context of a lot of European countries, particularly France, being speaking out against
And Germany.
and Germany in particular, speaking out against the U.S. invasion of Iraq and all that kind of stuff. And Rumsfeld at the time,
Well, he was
an old guy himself, was
pissed
talking about
because they wouldn't give
Well, he was
UN
pissed.
approval.
I know he was pissed about that, but what I'm talking here about his reference to Europe being old Europe and being caught in old world kind of thinking, like 17th, 18th, 19th century thinking, and this was the new American century, and we have this glorious new idea about how we're going to shape the world and how we're going to restructure, countries and regions in the world in our image, basically. And the Europeans are they're too anachronistic. They're stuck in 18th century European warfare and just a vision of the world that doesn't fit anymore. And we have this glorious new vision of the world, but actually the tables have been turned on America now, because now Russia and China have this glorious new vision that America is having trouble getting on board with, so it's old America at this point,
Yeah.
Old America just simply doesn't understand.
Who's the throwback now? Huh?
Exactly, yeah.
I think what Rumsfeld was referring, but not even going back that far, he was referring to the failure of the UN resolution to get France, especially with their vote. De Villepin famously voted abstained or no to a UN resolution for an invasion of Iraq. And he's like, that's old Europe. Meaning you're stuck in the 20th century paradigm where the Council of Five and the Security Council of the United Nations must give a unanimous voice in order to sanction an invasion. He's like, that's
Not how it works
That's
anymore.
not how it's like the Karov, supposedly it's Karov. And that's not how the world works anymore. We're an empire, and when we decide, shit happens.
We
Which
create
is
reality.
what then happened. And now it's all coming back to bite them on the ass in a big way. It's going to be rocky for the United States one way or the other. And I know you will emphasize that we shouldn't single them out, because if it's going to be rocky for the dollar, it's going to be rocky for the rest of us. This has been growing now for several weeks. It's first it was one bank, then a second bank, then two more, then three more. And now, like last week, there's like 10 regional banks in the US that need bailing out urgently. Headline RTs, trading in US banks halted as financial panic spreads. More regional lenders have seen their shares plummet, prompting regulators to intervene. PacWest Bank Core was last week. Another one in Arizona, Western Alliance. Let's counterbalance that, though. That sounds panicky and, oh my God, it must be nerve-wracking over there in financial wizardry land. Now you go to this and it's like, these guys don't look phased at all. They just carry on as usual. When Zelensky finally got back to Kiev last week, his first order of business was to receive 3 representatives, not the CEO, mind you, 3 reps.
More important,
From BlackRock.
three lawyers, more important than the CEO.
Yeah, 3 lawyers of BlackRock. Look at this behavior.
Mr. President,
Nice to meet you.
great honor and pleasure to meet you.
Honor. You're very welcome.
Very good to be here.
Hello, Charles. How are you?
Very good to see you.
Good to
Very
see you.
good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you for having us.
For us, privilege to have you. Friend at home. Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, you are also very
Це ж таки
tall.
буде потужний сигнал посилення.
Blah, blah, blah.
Stop it there. We don't have to,
He's like,
he-
welcome, guys.
welcome
yes.
to my country. I mean, to your country.
Yeah. Welcome, guys. Ukraine is open for business. Yes. Everything for sale. Everything must go. Infrastructure, ports, energy companies.
Land, you need grain.
Land.
Lots of grain. Poland reject grain. We give you grain.
We sell everything. Everything. We need the money.
You need slaves. We sell slaves. No problem. Underage girls. Yeah. Oh, no, don't talk about that. That's not. You're not supposed to talk about that. Yeah. So it's kind of jarring, isn't it? You know, smiles in front of the camera, la la la, and then yet the headlines are like, "Holy shit, what's going on here? Is this going to be a bank run? Is Wall Street going to going through another 2008?" The two of them sit together, and life just carries on. Maybe the panic's unmerited because they're so damn confident they can just funny money their way out of it, move some numbers around. You know.
Yeah.
Here's something that, again, if we're going to try and take a step way back and try to place things in as broad a context as possible. This is a clip from the Adam Curtis documentary all watched over by machines of loving grace. I know, Curtis, he had some weird ass.
The Club of
segments
Rome
in
then
these
held a
things.
press conference.
Before you play it, okay, it'll be explained. He's showing the Club of Rome meeting, I think in the early 70s, promoting a limits to growth report,
In Italy.
forecasting total collapse of global society by the early or mid 21st century. Remember, this is 1971 or 2. Let's play it.
A computer had predicted that the world was heading for a disaster.
They asked
From
the
a very
computer.
large number of computer runs, making various
Runs.
assumptions, adopting various maxima and minima, there is in fact a general forecast of a breakdown of world society in the first decades of the next century. We regard the MIT report as an extraordinarily important initial pioneering effort. It's opening up a great new field of research on the world as a system.
The Club of Rome published a book called The Limits to Growth, which laid out Forrester's world model and its frightening conclusions. It was a bestseller, and it transformed the debate about the environment,
Wow, what a graph.
because Forrester's model offered a way of conceptualizing the problem that seemed to be scientific and therefore neutral.
Seemed to be so.
His vision of the world as one interconnected system seemed to transcend politics and the petty interests of nations. Then, in Stockholm in 1972, the United Nations held a conference for the first time ever on the world environmental crisis. And the international bureaucrats who ran it turned to this idea of the world as a system to provide the conceptual framework. The world needed to be managed in a new, non-political way to avoid the threat of global collapse.
Now, this is the beginning of a debate. Nobody's decided precisely what the limits are. One can question whether it's 2010 where we all collapse or 2050 when we all collapse.
All
But what
collapse.
is absolutely certain is you cannot
Absolutely
run a
certain.
planetary society on the total irresponsible sovereignty of 120 different governments. It simply can't be done.
Lovely.
Of course, they went on to create 60 more governments by splitting up some states they didn't like into more manageable units, which completely defied the very point she was making. Of course,
When will we all collapse?
those new 60 states are all totally controlled by the West. But anyway,
And
that's, isn't it bizarre though? Like
Club of Rome was created by
50 years ago.
That guy who's at the beginning,
talking about now.
Alexander King, was a British chemist, and he was a pioneer of sustainable development. You know.
Well, before that, in between, he became governor of the Bank of England.
Yeah. But he's dead now. He died in 2007. So what was it all for, Alexander? Anyway,
Oh, come on. They're not far off. 2010 to 2050.
What?
Major
collapse.
I'm not saying.
When will we all collapse?
I'm not
Neil?
saying it's collapsing. I'm saying that 50 years later, the next generation or two of policy wonks and think tankers
Carried on with the idea.
carried on with
Yeah.
with a it's like a scientific objective forecast. My God, we just made an amazing discovery. The whole world's a system, and it's going to collapse in this time period. And
The
then-
computer said so. I asked the computer. Computer, what'll happen in 50 years? It will all collapse. Good God, did you hear that, man? Computer said the world's going to collapse.
What is this making? Is this like self-fulfilling prophecy? Are they willing this to happen, or is objective basis to what they're saying? both.
Overpopulation,
Too many people, huh?
probably.
That is the core of what they were saying at the time.
And climate change.
Although
Changing
they
climates.
changed, they dialed
Natural
back down.
cycles converging. Natural cycles, natural environmental and weather and climate cycles converging with a lot of people on the planet, could presage difficult times where the way the world operates and the way the world is run, and the way, most importantly, the way people are fed, how people are fed, and the resources from which people are fed are not sustainable, are not safe and secure.
Is that the case? Are there too many people? That's why prices are going up.
It could well be. but only in the context of the way that we actually run the world, the way people eat, and the way that the way food is distributed around the world, and
Price gouging.
yeah,
Too
exactly.
many middlemen,
Yes.
especially in the West,
Yes.
controlling shipping and shipping
Yes.
insurance
Yes.
and all that. Here's
So
my
there's
objection
a lot
to
of
it,
truth
'cause
to all that stuff, but
Here's where
it's not easily sorted out.
here's where it's exposed. Russia and China are not behaving as if this is a fact. Russia's agricultural output in fertilizers, in energy, but that's not agriculture, but it is. Fertilizers go into it in a big way. Its food production is at record beyond Soviet levels of food production.
And yeah,
And it grows and grows and grows. I don't see the signs of the collapse
no, not yet.
from that country and the other largest country, which obviously is probably more of a consumer than an exporter of food, China. They're not behaving as if it's all about to go tits up,
No,
or that
but-
we're on the verge of that.
No, I don't think they can. I don't think they can know that's going to happen or when it's going to happen. But
Westerners, since the Club of Rome and their current progeny, WEF and all, they all act like Prince Charles. We have catastrophe. We like 2 years ago. We have 7 days left. Oh my God! You know, Greta repeats the same mantra. Blah blah blah.
this gets into like deep conspiracy theories that I don't think we want to get into, Neil.
Ah, Jesus.
But where that idea comes from, I don't think we can talk about that. I'm sorry.
Are you censoring me?
Yes.
You're so YouTube.
You're not allowed. Yeah, I'm sorry. There's certain things. There's a new algorithm that says you can't say that. So basically, I'm sorry, but that's that. Yeah, I mean, you just have to wait and see. But things aren't looking good, and
Okay.
things
Let's not try
in
to
a way
resolve
that
it.
can't be predicted right now, and no one can know. That's why Russia and China aren't thinking along those lines. But you know, there's a possibility. I'm not saying sure, but there's a possibility that due to large-scale macro level dynamics that you know are far beyond any human's ability to control, much less understand, or to understand, much less control, that they may come into play, and in a relatively short period of time it'll all go tits up. Yes, and nobody can be accused or blamed for not foreseeing that. And why some people 30 or 40 years ago were talking about it, that's what I'm saying. We can't get into that.
So computer
Because the algorithm says you
in 1971 may have been actually bloody correct.
It wasn't a computer. Anyway, go ahead. Meanwhile, and this kind of ties into it, did you see that gay fella, the Irish Prime Minister, what's his name again? I've always trouble pronouncing
Leo
it.
the Leak.
Leo Varadkar.
Leo Varadkar.
Leo the Leak Varadkar.
From the clan Varadkar.
So Ireland recently tabled and I think are going to pass some fairly strict
I think it's passed.
hate speech laws where
law now.
basically any information on your computer that could be construed as you intending to use it in a way that could hurt or harm or offend someone, you can be prosecuted for it. So basically run-of-the-mill bullshit totalitarian kind of like laws that people in so-called democracies just pass just for because you know equality and non-discrimination, whatever. So the guy, a guy from Gript, which is an Irish media outlet, asks him about it because what they did
Alternative source.
yeah, they basically the Irish government, before passing this law, did a poll to see whether people supported that kind of hate speech law, and the poll said no, or rather the people, majority 70% or something, said nah, we don't like that. So then the guy asked him, so why did you go ahead and do it anyway?
Taoiseach, your government conducted a public consultation regarding hate speech laws where citizens were asked to give their thoughts on the issue, and out of the thousands of responses from private individuals, over 70% were not supportive of such laws, and yet you're proceeding with them anyway. So my question is, why did your government bother to do a public consultation if you were just going to ignore the results?
Well, we do public consultations because we think they're good practice. It's a way to find out what people's thoughts are on issues, and it's also a way to flesh out and highlight some of the issues that we may not have considered. But we're also wise to the fact that the vast majority of people don't make submissions to public consultations. We have to bear that in mind. It's only a small portion of the population that participate in these things, so it's not necessarily reflective of public opinion. And also we're wise to the fact that very often submissions are organised, and campaign groups will organise responses, so we're clear with that too.
But why hold the consultation if the end result is just going to be disregarded on the basis that it's not representative of public opinion? What's the point of it then?
Well, the point is that we're a democracy, and in Ireland we have elections, and decisions are made by the government and the elected parliament. They're not made on foot of public consultations or opinion polls. That's not what they're about. They're about testing the temperature.
So is it just for show then?
No.
No, not for sure. But more or less what you just said over the past minute suggests that it has been for show. No, but it's not. Yeah, but that's more or less what you said. I'm going to end the interview here. What an idiot. Basically what he's saying is that, look, we'll do the polls just for lols or the optics, make it look good or whatever.
Well, no, hoping that we get the right response.
Hope that we get the right response. If we don't, fuck it, we don't care anyway. We're going to go ahead and do. And the argument is that, well, listen, we don't make government policy based on polls. We make it based on elections, right? So people voted me, and I like this law. People vote for me, and I like this law, so I'm going to go ahead and impose this law because that represents the will of the people.
They didn't vote for him.
No. Well, they voted for this government.
In
Neil.
the 2020
the government. I represent
election,
the government.
They voted first Sinn Féin. The number 2 and 3 party then colluded to keep Sinn Féin out by forming a coalition government in which the second party winner, leader, Micheál Martin, would be Taoiseach.
Micheál Martin.
Micheál for the first half of it. And then this guy, number 3 in the election result, would take the second half. He was not elected in a democratic election. He is not the democratically elected leader. He is not the legally he is. Yes, indeed, the Constitution allows for that. But he does not represent the people.
Diversity.
In exactly the same way that the result of his polling of the population on this hate speech law did not reflect it either.
Yeah,
So-
but diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, whatever. It's
diversity.
It's
inclusion,
the same
equity.
phenomenon
Die.
as everywhere else. It's the parliament that he referred to versus the people. You know, and he says, "Well, we were all elected." No, a bunch of you were. Ironically, one of the more extreme lefty groups in parliament. It was overwhelmingly passed, by the way, but there was an objection from the people and Planet Before Profit group. Hardcore lefty on everything pro-COVID, totally useless in this time to have as their representatives. But they did make an objection. They filed a motion to maybe just rein in. Can we just check that this is in line with, for example, the European Convention on Human Rights? Overruled, law was passed. It's now the harshest hate speech laws in the whole of the Western realm. And we'll see what happens next. But they're going to have to start enforcing it. It'll clog up the courts. Probably it'll be enforced. It's not meant to actually be enforced, but it'll be a form of
a threat. Yeah,
a chilling factor.
Yeah. What about Tucker?
Tucker, the legend, had a great podcast with that's her name, Tulsi Gabbard.
Tulsi Gabbard. Here's a quick snip. Have a listen.
Yeah, worth listening to in full.
There are members of Congress who are controlled by the intel agencies. I'm not speculating on this. You know, I lived there for 35 years. I know this. I had a very high-ranking member of the House Intel Committee tell me at dinner at a restaurant in Washington when he'd been drinking, we got to talk about this. And I said, oh, I'll text you. He goes, I can't text. And I said, why is that? And he goes, well, because NSA reads my text. And I said, NSA reads it. Wait, you're the head guy on the Intelligence Committee. You're their boss. You're providing oversight in our constitutional system. He's like, yeah, but, they're still spying at me. First thing. Second thing, Michael McCall, who is, the leader of, I would say, the neocons in the House, kind of low-key neocons, but neocons. I got into an argument with him once last year on the phone. He told somebody that I was a Russian agent or something, and I was outraged. So I called him on the phone, and I used bad language. I was really mad. And he said, whoa. I just got that. That's what the intel briefers told me, that you were working for Russia. And I said, that's what the intel briefers told you? You believe your fucking intel brief? Like, how old
Yeah.
are you, son?
Yeah,
You know, I'm
no,
from
that's
DC. My
fine.
dad was in this world. Like,
Yeah.
you're being manipulated by your intel briefers.
Yeah. Imagine if you're an intel briefer and you can just call up any member of Congress and go, see that other guy? Russian agent. Okay, thanks.
He goes
No
on-
evidence, just...
I've watched the rest of that. He goes on to say that Michael McCall and the others are not actually swayed by those briefings. They're going along with it because ideologically they know that it's best to just conform.
That's worse.
Exactly. It's worse. That's why when they get those briefing documents, it isn't like, oh, thank you, CIA, I've just been informed about an important situation. It's like, oh, this is a cue from the CIA that if I don't take the right ideological side on this issue and call X a Russian agent,
They've got 6
this
ways from
could-
Sunday.
They've got 6 ways from Sunday, and I could be next. So, okay, I
Yeah.
agree. Tucker's a Russian agent.
Yeah. You see there's another shooting in Texas this morning, yesterday.
That was a legit one. Random guy gets out of a car, shoots the place up immediately. There was no personal vendetta. I was going to say there was no gangland connection, but there might be. I've seen photos. There's a bloody photo of the guy dead. He's been shot dead by a cop who was either on patrol or just happened to be nearby. And he's dressed head to toe. Like he's got all black, heavily armed, like he's prepared for a long shootout or something.
That doesn't necessarily mean gangland, though.
No, but he's got his hand is visible and he's got a distinct tat on his arm.
His
And
tattoo is a tattoo of the emblem of the city of Dallas.
yeah, and apparently one of the gangs uses that.
Okay.
Shaved head, looked Mexican, looked brutal. Maybe I'm just going on snapshot, I know, but it could have been actually gang member. But he's not gang member doing a gang guy shooting. He's doing a random people he doesn't know, you know?
Right. So he just went off basically, but it's just like it's so common at this point. It's like just appears in the news feed. 8-10 people killed in America. Boom, carry on.
Yeah,
It's
no,
pretty bad. Like
it's been several weeks running. There's been one. Last week was a bit different, where the guy was at his place of work and shot colleagues. At least he knows them. It's not totally random, right? There's been a bunch in recent weeks, but there was actually a lull there.
a lull of a few weeks where there were no shootings in
A
America.
few months. There was a spate in January where there were randoms. The guy, the
Supposedly-
perp doesn't know the victims.
There's been 200 so far in America this year alone.
That includes like
I know everything.
a guy in Chicago shooting up a store because he didn't get the jellies he wanted, or he got looked at funny. Definitely, people are going off all over the place. Maybe I shouldn't bother making these distinctions, but when it's like a guy who's going out, he knows he's going out, or he looks like he's under some kind of sway, and he steps out of a car with a full automatic rifle. They're usually different than gangbangers robbing a store,
Right.
or a family feud, or you dissed my girl, or something like that, Anyway, it's okay. So that's the United States. We've come to expect it, right? It's horrific, and it happens all the time. I'll give you that. What the hell happened in Serbia last week? 2 mass shootings, 2 days apart, 2 different places. One of them's in a school, and the perp is, it's more plausibly just shit happens because the guy is a student at the school. He's 14 years old, kills 8 other students and a teacher or 2 or something. Okay. That happened in Germany this year as well. In other European countries, it's happened here and there. But then the next day, another shooting in another town. In this case, I can't remember the deets on this. This is an older man. Again, a similar number of dead. I don't think he knew anyone. I think that's kind of rando. There's the perp and the victims are strangers to each other. Now, in some context explaining reporting on this, I've heard them say, well, Serbia is a heavily armed country. That's a remnant of its wars against against NATO, against the United States, basically, from the 1990s. That is the case objectively. There are more arms. People were encouraged to have firearms at the time, and they still do. But there hasn't been a mass shooting of randoms in Serbia since 2013, when some guy went postal. So it's not something that happens every day. Twice in a week is notable. I don't know of any connection. I don't know of anyone making any suggestion of a connection, but it stands out.
Yeah,
definitely.
for sure, yeah.
Elon Musk is still terrified about AI taking over. Not sure where to think. I wouldn't rank that high on my list of concerns right now. But in any event, Elon, don't worry, fear not, because Joe Biden heard your cry and he has decided that he's going to fix the problem. Because Kamala is America's official intelligence, official artificial intelligence czar.
Cool. So basically, she'll be answering all the questions instead of ChatGPT, which will be like even scarier. Imagine how scary that would be if you were to ask her random questions. You'd jump out the window like.
Yeah,
she's going to crack down on artificial intelligence. Ooh,
she's going to regulate it.
Good job, Kamala.
Everybody, this is a moment in time. A moment in time is like a part of time that happens fleetingly.
In a timely way.
In a timely way. And the time comes and it goes. And the AI becomes our friend. I will make it our friend. Yes. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Kamala.
Any questions, ma'am? No, she's gone. Meanwhile, someone who is a bit more, vastly more articulate for all his speech impediment, that no one should be dissing. God bless him. He's trying to desperately articulate the last strands of common sense in the DC American elite. Bobby Jr. last week told that nice fellow at Unheard that we need a peaceful revolution. I think that should put no one in any doubt as to what he sees as his realistic chances of winning it legitimately an election fair and square and things changing. He's calling for a, quote, peaceful revolution. Yeah. That's not going to happen either, but at least he said it. One last thing on Tucker, actually. Probably Tucker won't, this is what I feared at the time, he won't be appearing on any kind of big platform anytime soon because he's gagged by his Fox News contract until after the 24 election. There's a 2-year, and I think that might have been why they timed it now, because he's now gagged until early 2025.
What contract? What contract?
His Fox News contract.
He doesn't have a contract with them anymore. He was fired.
Apparently, it's pay or play or something. There's a clause in it that even if you're fired, you can't work for anyone else. Hang on, I'll have a look here. Maybe his lawyers will challenge it. Maybe it's not so such a sure thing. New York Times is reporting the
cannot appear on TV before 2025 under his employment terms.
Maybe sidelined from TV news entirely until after the election, unless he can extricate himself from his previous employment contract. You would think, right? But we're no lawyers, that if your employer or one side in the breaks the contract, then it's null and void. But apparently, it may not be the case.
Huh. Okay.
Anyway, he's shooting truth bombs, and Tulsi Gabbard has a Reddit. Everyone should get him on their podcast, and they'll still get more views than he would
for sure,
got
yeah.
on Fox News anyway. So.
Well, that's the best place for him anyway, to be honest. Where he can speak his mind, you know. Although he didn't exactly restrain himself on Fox News, yeah.
Outrageous piracy on the high seas in recent weeks. The Iranians have seized, first last week one, and now this week a second oil tanker. One was bound for Houston, and the other one is probably US owned as well. Mm-hmm. This is probably sweet revenge for the US seizing an Iranian oil tanker about 2 weeks ago. They have some balls. Like the Iranians, like they don't wait around and whinge about US sanctions. They just get on with developing their industry as best they can. Sans dollars or anything dollar affiliated, and then the way they did it was they swarmed the ship. Obviously, it's a huge tanker. They don't have much in the way of big cruisers themselves, so they just swarm it with tons of little speedboats. But as far as I know, it's been impounded. It's in Iran, both ships. But then the US doesn't make it. This would have been, casus belli just 10 years ago. Remember 10 years ago? Oh my God, any day now the US is going to invade Iran, or John McCain bomb Iran.
Mm-hmm.
We got through that. It never happened. And since then, Iran has, actual clout
Mm-hmm.
to give as good as it gets. It's from oilprice.com. US seizes Iranian oil from tanker. They didn't even impound it. They just took it right off the ship. And that was clearly the event that sparked Iran to counter back with its own. Well, if you're going to be pirates, then so we. Watch this. Any new developments in Sudan this week? We kind of touched on it briefly.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of weeks ago.
Not really, no.
Wagner's involved there. Russia and Sudan maybe agreeing to have a Russian military base,
Mm-hmm.
or port access in the way that the Russians have in the Latakia province in Syria.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another one. China is probably building a military base in the UAE. At least the US is paranoid that it is. Russia they can handle, but China is like, that's a beast that they're not anywhere near as confident of containing. Otherwise it would have happened before now. Russia they picked on first because, well, it's nowhere near as strong a powerful place. But so this is the Washington Post speculating. Build-up resumed at suspected Chinese military site in UAE, leaks says. The Discord leaks. So this may have come courtesy of that kid, the 21-year-old leaking photos of quote-unquote classified documents from Pentagon networks. Yeah, well, they can worry and freak out all they want, but this is inevitably going to happen more and more. The Chinese already have access not far from Sudan, actually, on the Red Sea coast of Africa in Djibouti.
And a bunch of other countries do those. Well,
Right,
it's like,
they all do, yeah. It's like, if you can, why can't we, Okay, so there's nothing else really on international geopolitical stuff. We touched on the mass shooting. This is just something I think is. I got no explanation for it, but maybe it's just. Maybe there's something to it, maybe not. There's raging wildfires in Alberta at the moment. The snow is barely melted, right? They just come out of. Often the snow is still. We've got a Canadian right here. There's often still snow on the ground in places like Alberta at this time of the year. But there's raging wildfires. And up to 25,000 people evacuated so far in some towns like south of Grand Prairie. At the same time, being blamed on the same weather front, riverbanks are bursting just over the mountains in British Columbia.
Mm-hmm.
Flash flooding. And there it's heavy snowmelt, forcing evacuation of communities in British Columbia at the same time. Now, I wonder, arson in some of these cases, some of these wildfires in Alberta. Last week, the RCMP arrested this dude. Edmonton Journal. So this must be Edmonton's Alberta, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. So a man was arrested. Facing 10 arson charges after a string of wildfires. That's dated April 30th he was arrested. So the recent wildfires are separate from this. Or maybe they're not. Maybe they're just more in the same area and they've grown or something. But yeah, right there, you've got arson. So is that just the weather, just the climate going crazy, or someone helping that along, you know?
Yeah. Hard to tell. Outgassing.
Yeah.
Methane. Sinkholes opening up. Who knows? More lightning strikes. Hard to tell.
None reported. I asked someone who's from the oil sands region this morning, actually. Is that ever like people know about that? Is that a thing? You know, methane comes up because, of course, they're mining, you know, drilling for oil big time in Alberta. But he's like, nope, never heard of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Social media. What's going on in the world today is I'm a bit kind of bemused by the whole thing. You know, sorry, did I send that to you? Oops, I shouldn't have sent that to you. And I think it's somebody that knows cell. It's look at how out of focus I am. Old style coronation overlay on the coronation yesterday. No, I was just going to say that social media these days is the vast majority of what I see on social media and the media today is people talking and having debates and arguing over stuff that is self-evident. You know, self-evidently right or self-evidently wrong. You know, and I can understand why a lot of people would just be, or either just engaging in social media just to kind of like to get the popcorn out and watch it happen, because it's just bizarre to see people have strong opinions on stuff that no one in the history of human civilization ever needed to have a strong opinion on, because it was self-evidently right or wrong already, you know. But by all means, go ahead and like fight over it for weeks and weeks if you feel like doing that, you know. That's the vast majority of stuff that's going on, you know. Or it's just media, the mainstream media, you know, spinning something that is, to any rational mind or rational person, is against self-evidently good or bad, but the media gives you this new, as it, you know, this kind of nuanced perspective on it. Like,
well, if the media got back to doing what they used to do, reporting facts, this wouldn't be happening.
It would be a lot clearer, yeah. But they don't do that. And that's the reason they don't do it, because if they just give the facts, people would very quickly be able to draw a conclusion. Yeah. But when you don't report facts and you muddy them and twist them and distort them and pretend it's nuanced when it's not, then people get confused and can't think clearly.
They take to social media, and if they were left alone there, they would form a consensus. But no.
Even on social media.
The powers that be send out thousands of trolls.
Or pass laws.
To, quote, disrupt, deny, the 4 Ds that Edward Snowden leaks revealed that the US Cyber Command is completely focused on sock puppet armies to get in there and just shake the shit out of
or government.
Make sure people don't come to a coherent picture.
Or in the worst case scenario, governments have hate speech laws, so that when people actually draw the right conclusion, that actually is that correct conclusion you drew based on the facts, that actually comes under our hate speech laws. You're not allowed to draw that conclusion anymore. You're allowed to draw it, but you can't speak about it. That's what's going on, and it's just bizarre. So yeah, sit back and watch the show is my advice, because there's not a lot left to do at this stage. You know, late stage, whatever era we're in the late stage of it, and it's going somewhere. And we're not doomers, but
we're not.
No,
we're totally doomers.
We're not doomers at all. But you know, don't get sucked into the maelstrom. You know, there'll be a bit of a maelstrom coming. There is one brewing right now and gaining in strength. So just don't get sucked into it too much. You know, because really, it's not worth it. Unless you're in it for the clicks and the followers, then fire away, troll all you like. Find out what the current thing is and say the opposite, and you'll get some clicks. Or support the current thing, and you'll get some clicks, depending on which side of the fence you've chosen to get your clicks from. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there for this week's folks. You can stay, Neil, and I'll leave it. Neil might want to sit here and talk to you for a little while. Him and Damien can have a conversation with you. But I'm going to go, so I hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks for watching, commenting, etc. Don't forget to like all the likey things and whatever. And what are you talking about?
We've got to take a question from a reader.
NewsReal with Joe Neil. What is a woman? Oh, yeah.
Don't do it, Joe. It's bait. They're trying to pull you into the maelstrom. Shut up, you lot.
If trans women aren't women, how come they talk so much? Anyway, yeah, so we'll leave it there for this week, folks. Thanks for all the stuff as you said. We'll be back next week with another show. Until then, have a good one. See ya. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Can't stop the signal now.